Trying to start the ladder going up to the loft. Pulled down these boards from my loft. These are pine. This is very old stuff. Straight grain. I don't know whether you call it heart pine or longleaf pine or whatever, but it's pine. And I'm cutting 4 of these to 9 foot long. I'm gonna glue them together, and that'll be my sides of my ladder, and we'll start from there. Ran these boards to the table saw to get a smooth edge, and man, they smell like turpentine. They smell like these trees were cut down yesterday, and they could be 80, 90 years since they were cut and milled. I'll tell you the story about those in a little bit. My 2 side rails have been together long enough to take the clamps off, but not long enough to work, I don't think. But if I take the clamps off, and then I can glue up 7 steps with the drops. So we're gonna do that. We're gonna take the clamps off, move these boards to the side, let them cure, and glue up 7 steps. So when we get working, we have everything we need. So the drops that I've cut up for the steps, I've cut them 18 inches long, which is a little over long. A lot of them have a split in them. So I'm just going to rip these up in little pieces and glue them back. And the more pieces I glue together, the stronger it'll be, actually, as far as the resisting splitting. So we're just going to have a whole bunch of pieces, and we're going to sort them all out and glue them back together. So I got cut up from my drops everything that was usable, and I've ended up with some kindling. I want to show you this. I know you don't have smell-o-vision on YouTube. Look at this black smoke coming off of this piece of wood. It's like so resin rich. I think if I hammered them, I could get turpentine coming out of these boards. This is going to be some great kindling for next winter if it ever gets cold enough to make fire. We don't get many cold days. Here's all my step parts ready to glue up. 7 sets, and they're all at least 6 inches wide. So it's been 4 hours, I think, since I glued these up, and it's really, really hot. So I'm gonna call them good. I'm gonna go ahead and plane them down just until they're flat, and then I'm gonna stop. Okay, 2 side rails. I think that'd be the right term, or planed. And now I need to rip them to width, which is a matter of taking like 1/8 of an inch off of both sides. And then I need to bring them in there and cut the top and the bottom to the slope, because it won't be vertical. And then I need to decide how I'm going to affix these 7 steps to these side frames. Some kind of mortised dado or something. It'll be a locking joint. It won't just be fasteners. That's no good. But it's hot out here. I'm gonna go take a break. So I brought the side rail, one of the side rails in here, and just kind of leaned it up where the slope looked comfortable to climb, and I scribed the bottom to that slope with a 2x4, and I went and cut it, and I cut top and bottom because I know they're going to match. This slope does. Now it's sitting here, but I don't have a finished floor in here yet, and if I use typical snap together vinyl stuff, it's probably going to be 3/8 of an inch. So I got this marked. This mark is the top of the deck, and if the floor comes up 3/8 of an inch, I need that top step to be 3/8 down from there, and then I need the bottom step to be 1 foot off the ground. And I need to see, and I need to divide it up into equal steps from there, and then I got to decide how to mount the steps, and I'm going to cut some holes in here for hand holes between the steps. I got to get all that stuff laid out. So, you know, that metric system has some advantages. You can put in a big old number and divide by 7 and get numbers that you can read right on a tape measure. Now OSHA says ladder steps should be 12 inches. And OSHA has nothing to do with this, except that I know they do. They spend millions of dollars on research every year and safety analysis and investigate accidents. So if they say the best spacing for steps on a ladder is 12 inches, I'm going to believe them. I started out with 12 inches, and I had to adjust a little bit to make it work. So I ended up with like 12 3/8 of an inch is my step spacing. Cabinet doors are outside with wet varnish. The cabinet is in the teeny house with wet varnish, and the countertop is in the carport with wet epoxy. I now have my shop back. This is the Stair Stringers. I need to do two things to them. I need to route a groove for every step. I'm not going to go through, but I want to tenon. I want to make sure the steps are not held up just with screws. And then I want to cut an oval between each step, and that'll be the handhold. So got a lot of sawdust to make. Need to make so I'm going to make a jig to hold the router so I can get these routed joints reproducible, you know, so they'll be the same on all of them. They need to be pretty accurate. So this is the start of my template. It's just a piece of scrap plywood and two guides, and the router fits tight in there. So now I'm going to cut a groove from here to here. That's going to be the same width as the router bit, and it's going to be the same width as the groove in the Stair Stringers. I decided I want the groove to stop 3/4 of an inch from the front and 3/4 of an inch from the back. So I put this on there and clamped it down and slid the router so that it would do that, and then I nailed the stop block front and back. So these should be reproducible. If one, I put this pencil mark on the 3/4 inch mark, and two, put this edge on the pencil mark that I've on this mark, and three, I clamp it so it doesn't move. It should be kind of idiot proof. And the depth I can set, I haven't set it yet, but I got a little deal here where I can set the depth, and it's a plunge router. Doesn't have to be a plunge router, you could do it with a regular router. The plunge router is going to make it a little easier. And I got a 3/8 inch bit, and it's terribly dull, so it's going to scream, but that's just the way it's going to be. Years ago, when I had a real job, I worked on a pump station in New Orleans. These were huge pumps. They went from the basement to the first floor. And while I was in the basement, I noticed some timbers leaning against the back corner. They'd been there forever. They were covered with cobwebs, roach poop. Looked like they'd been there for decades and decades. And I asked around, and all of the people that worked at the pump station, all the operators, all said the same thing. They've been there since they started working there. Some of them been there 30 years, but these beams were there, so nobody wanted them. I got permission to take them. I loaded them up in my truck, brought them to a sawmill, and one of the beams was this pine, and it's just incredibly hard stuff, so I was just really lucky to score that beam. So I'm on the second stringer, and I'm making my 3/4 inch marks on the opposite side, and my reference is toward the top, so it's a different side of this template, but it's the top of the stairs. And I thought about this long and hard because I want to make sure I didn't screw them all up, but I think I got it straight, and the router's doing great, no problem. And I sharpened that bit a little bit with my diamond stone, and I think it worked. It's cutting pretty well. 14 routed joints, put them side by side to check for the carnage, and all in all, they're very accurate. I'm pretty happy. I got this one jacked up. It looks like I was looking at the wrong line, so the joint's too far that way. I'm gonna go ahead and finish cutting it, and I'll put a plug in there. If I'm gonna screw something up, that's an easy fix. So I'll lay out some holes and cut some hand holes. I see what I did with the jig in place. It looks like the line right there. It looks like the line, but it's actually just a dark grain. So I got to slid over and route this a little bit. You know, I can throw this jig in the garbage because it has done its job. So I'm playing with hand holes. And I kind of like this one, but on this one, it's the bottom and the top are sloped with the steps, which looks kind of cool. But that means I'm going to have two templates or invert the template. So I decided just to make a full half circle top and bottom. And this is the size I think it is. This template is simple as it can be. I just have a board nailed here and nailed here so it can slide up and down the stringer. I'm gonna cut this hole. It's got to be sanded really well because the guide bearing on the router is gonna ride in that hole. I'll cut it out and sand it, and then take a peek and see if I like it. And always, it's just a piece of scrap plywood. I can always do another one. Okay, I think I have a workable template. I've cut the hole and sanded it up, and then I drilled 2 additional holes so I can reference the routed groove and line it up with this pencil mark each time. And I think that's going to center it. And I did a pencil. What I'm going to do is cut all these with a jigsaw and leave the line, and then I'll clamp the template back and flip it over, because my router, because my bearing guided router bits all have the bearing on the bottom, so it's no big deal. But I want to waste as much wood as I can with the jigsaw. And if I measure here, going straight up, I got about 1 and, I don't know, hard to say, 1 7/8. And if I measure here, close enough to being in the middle. This will be small enough where I can get a grip, where the kids can grip it. Yeah, okay. So I'm gonna mark them all with a pencil, and I'm gonna cut them all with the jigsaw. And then I'm gonna put the template back on there and route. So I got all the circles marked. A quick double check before I start drilling. This would be really hard to fix if I screwed one of these up, but I think I'm good. I'm not putting any on the bottom 2 because nobody's that short. All right, I'm gonna cut these with a jigsaw. I'm gonna cut them about 1/4 inch in from the line, and then I'll put the template back on and flip them over, and we'll route them. This grain, it is super straight, and on pencil lines, which are straight, I'm messing with my head. I was having trouble seeing where I was going on the straightaways. The curves were okay, so I got chicken. I stopped and I went and got a lamp. You know, much better. I can see better the more light I put on something. So if you're going to build a set of steps with this design, you got to make sure the wood's going to be strong enough, because there won't be a whole lot left after I cut the holes. I'm real confident of this particular wood, but like Home Depot white pine or spruce or one of those, I would be hesitant to use this design with that kind of wood. They're not strong enough. Okay, all the holes are roughed out with the jigsaw. It was not as easy as I thought it was going to be. This hard wood wants to pull the blade where it wants to go, or wants to pull the blade not where I want it to go all the time. I got a good jigsaw and I have a sharp blade, but it was a little bit challenging trying not to screw it up. I don't think I did. If I did, it's so close that it'll sand out. I think I got most of them okay. So this is the bit I'm going to use, and it's fairly sharp, so it's going to cut through the wood until this little roller thing hits the plywood template, which is clamped securely on the bottom. Just hope this wood's kind of splintery. I just hope it doesn't give me problems in that regard. I'm gonna chuck up this bit and give it a shot. Normally you push a router against the rotation of the bit, but this stuff was so hard and so straight grained that it was tending to lift the grain, because the router bit was like digging in and coming out. It was tending to split, and that wasn't any good. So for the first couple of passes I went backwards. So I'm trying to go to the left and the router's trying to go to the left, so it looks really jerky. But it solved the problem. It reduces the chips, and I got it down close to the template, and then I went the right way and ended up with some beautiful holes. I did spend some time on the template and sanded it and made it really smooth, and it showed up in the end product, because my routed holes are really nice. They require very little sanding. And here one of the clamps was in the way of the router base, so I had to loosen it up, move it back to catch that last little bit. Moving the template ahead is pretty straightforward. Just turn the stringer over, unclamp it, and slide it to the next opening that's been jigsawed but not routed. And I look through the two little holes that I've drilled in the template, and they should line up with the lines on the routed joints for the steps. And then I look at in the middle, and I can always scoot it a little bit if my jigsaw hole's kind of rough. I can always scoot it a little bit one way or the other. It doesn't make any difference, but I only had to scoot it on one of them where I had a little whoops. For the most part, this went really well, just like clockwork. Sorry to make you watch this again. I was just so stoked that it worked that I just put it up here twice. Okay, 2 pieces of wood, 2 simple little templates, and I have now a pair of stringers, and they're pretty darn good. It's beautiful wood. And I have 7 steps that are glued up, and they will need to be plain to thickness. Doesn't really matter what thickness, as long as they're all the same. And don't have to cut them all the same length. And then I'll have to cut a joint on the end of each one to fit into the little notches. And then try to decide if I'm gonna try to hide the screws or just leave them exposed. I'm not sure. We'll see. So the 7 step treads you saw glued up, I ran them through the planer until they're all the same thickness and most of the defects were gone. I didn't get them perfect. I can put a couple of bad ones on the bottom 2 steps where you won't see them. I just thought they were thin enough. I didn't want to keep planing. And then I put one edge on the joiner, got it straight, and then stood them all up next to each other and ripped them as wide as I could get them to the narrowest board. So I'm right at 6 inches. And then I put them on the miter saw, and I cut one end square. So now I'm gonna see which one is the shortest, and that's gonna be the deciding factor. I'm gonna cut them all as long as I can, and the short one will be the limiting factor. Looks like they're all pretty close. This one here is probably the shortest, so I'm gonna cut the square end on this end, and that'll be the length for all the rest of them. So before I cut the joint on the end, I'm gonna put the belt sander on them and sand out these little planer marks. And it may be just that I'm stalling because I don't really know how to cut the joint on the end yet, or how I'm gonna cut it. I am gonna sand them first to get them flat. If I sand them after I cut the joint, it's hard not to round that little joint over. And I definitely don't want to sand them after it's put together. So now's the time. And I'm running the 1/4 inch round over bit on all 4 sides before I cut the joint, and that keeps the end crisp where it goes into the stringer. No, you don't have any boo-boos. So I got a set of dado blades on the table saw, and I have a good set. I don't use them very often because frankly they kind of scare me, but I think for this application it's going to be the best thing. So first I got to get the depth of the cut, which I'm going to get by sliding the fence in and out, and I can use some scraps. Well, that would be the length of the cut. And then I got to get the depth of the cut, which I will get practicing on this board, which I just planed the same thickness as the steps, and it should be kind of idiot proof after that. I won't be able to cut it too deep either way. So let's get some scraps and get the length set. Now, I screwed a waste board to the fence because the dado blades are going to go up into it, and then I scooted the fence back and forth until a cut on this scrap was just right. I don't want it to bottom out in case there's an imperfection, but I want it really, really close, and that's what I got. So from here on out, the fence doesn't move. And now with this scrap, I'll adjust the dado blade up and down until the width of the tenon is correct. I don't want it like a hammer fit, like if I just had one to put together, I'd want it really, really snug. But since I'm dealing with 7 at the same time, I don't want them quite that tight. So I took the scrap and I cut both sides and checked it, cut both sides, checked it. And if I went too far, which I did a couple of times, then I went to the miter saw and just cut off an inch and started over. And I ended up with a joint that is probably looser than you would think you would want, but it's an epoxy joint, one, and there's 7 of them that have to go in at the same time. So I'm happy with the joint, and it's very reproducible. So we'll just do all the steps now. Take a deep breath and start cutting steps. So to get the end cut, I left everything the same. I just cranked the blade up and cut the same on both sides until it was short enough to fit in the groove. Now we've got to do all of them. Now I'm going to fit the steps and mark them, and theoretically they all should be the same, but this is woodworking. They're never all the same. Some of them may be a little fat and may need a little trim. We're going to start doing that. And the bottom 2 steps, I got a couple of steps with some bad sides. I put them down there where they don't show. I got a clamp up. It's dry, no glue yet. I'm scratching my bald head. But I think I will glue the steps to this stringer, all of them. Put glue in the hole, put the step, put the top on and clamp it just like it is now, and let that cure, which means tomorrow flip it over and do the other side. Because I think if I try to put glue up here and clamp it, I'm gonna have a big old mess. I don't want to have smeared glue all over the place. So I think that's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna take them apart, I'm gonna put glue in the slots and put it back together and clamp it. I'll be able to see any glue that oozes out, and I'll be able to clean it. If I do it upside, if I try to do this at the same time, I think that's going to be a nightmare. So, all right, I'm pretty happy. It fits pretty good, pretty well, excuse me. Loft ladder, side 1, glued, looking sharp, fitting good. Got a good 90-degree angle on the steps. Everything's lovely. Actually, this is the front. That was the back. So this is what you'll see when you're inside. Pretty cool. Tomorrow we'll glue the other half, and then I'll put some mechanical fasteners in here. I'll have to buy something. I don't have enough of any one thing. Pretty cool. Okay, next morning I have glue in the mortises and on the tenons, and I'm getting it put back together. Now this is epoxy, thickened epoxy. It does not rely on huge clamping pressure to have a strong joint like the yellow glues. The yellow glues have to be clamped tightly or you don't get the strength. The clamps just get it where it's supposed to be. So once I got the step on the end in place and put a clamp on it so it wouldn't jump out, the rest of them just kind of went in just wonderfully. And then I took a little block of wood and gave it a few whacks just to make sure everything was set down in there well. And then the MEK and the rag comes out to clean up the squeeze out. Our ladder and our trim have two coats of varnish. I'm sorry. And I'm now going to put the screws here. I'm going to put 3 screws in each step, and that's kind of give it some lateral racking strength. Let's get it. The ladder is basically done. The varnish is terrible. I'm gonna have to redo it, but I need some cooler days where I can do it outside. And this time of year, we have afternoon thunderstorms every single day. So we'll wait for better weather and we'll take it out and sand it, put a fresh coat of varnish. The little trim board is done. It fits well and it's the right height. And I don't have it screwed yet because it'll probably come off for the ride. And I'll have wheels. They're in the design phase right now because to get up there, it's better if the ladder's in the middle, but for most of the part, it would be nice if the ladder was over here on the side out of the way. So we're gonna make some little wheels to roll it back and forth. Of course, I won't buy anything. I'll just, we'll make something. So hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you attempt to build one of these things. It wasn't that hard, and I think it came out pretty cool. Better than most library stairs. Better than most loft stairs. All right, thanks for watching.